different streams tonight. The first one here, she is the great Lily Luchesi. Did I get this right? Lily Luchesi?
Luchesi.
Luchesi?
Yes.
Sorry. It's,
Okay.
yeah. I always feel a little bad about that because like, if you look at my last name, it's like, I can get that right. I should be able to get everybody else's right, but that's not how this works ever. So
no, same here. It's all good.
yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, like I said, I've been wanting to do this one for a while. Like I heard lots of nice things about you, and I'm like, you'd be a fun conversation. And then it took a while. It took a little while to get here, but we got here, and that's all that really matters. So
I think people may have been too generous with their praise, but I thank them.
Well, no, it just like I said, like I actually, so I thought you were generous with my praise earlier this morning because I was like, oh my gosh, it's like yeah, he had Marissa Mayer on the show. Yes, I did.
Yes, you did.
But so what? I mean, this is just me. I mean, we've been on the same show before with Joe, and it's like, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have a good time. I'm probably gonna bullshit with you a little bit for about an hour or so, and see where it goes. I mean, that's what we do here, right?
That sounds good to me. But yeah, it's, when I saw that was the last thing on the podcast, I'm like, oh wow, okay, I'm following somebody up that I don't think I can top. As a guest.
Well, you're about 10 episodes down the queue from her, so you're gonna be a bit.
So no one's gonna jump from her to me and be like, what the?
Oh yeah, no.
Okay, did I swear? I should have asked.
No, you can swear all you want.
Oh, okay.
I only have 2 rules. Listen. I have 2 rules, just 2. If you're gonna be a dick, be an entertaining one, right? And second rule is don't be a bigot. Otherwise, I don't really care. Like that's like nothing's off limits.
Rules to live your life by, actually. Not just
it's simple. Look, here's the thing. I'm in my 40s. Sometimes I'm an asshole. I try not to be on the show, but sometimes I'm an asshole. I try to be an entertaining one when I am an asshole, because at least then you can get away with it a little bit more, right? So I've learned this. If you're entertaining and you come across as relatively friendly, you can get away with a lot more shit. I've learned this. This is like a life lesson, folks. Like, try to be as friendly as you can. You can get away with a lot more crap. That's just the universal rule. And
it's true.
Yeah, it's true. Like, no, I have gotten away with saying so many things to women just because I'm nice about it. Like, that's honest. I can get away with it because it's just one of those things I've noticed. Like, if you come across like you're a dick, like you are actually a legitimate asshole, everybody's just gonna say, "Well, fuck you." But if you're like, "Hey, you're awesome, but could you do this?" Right? And it's a little easier to swallow that, whatever it is you're gonna say. But I've learned this. With like, it's all about tact, right? You can be an asshole sometimes, but if you're tactful about it, people will at least listen to you.
That is the rule of editing. My job, people literally pay me to sit there and tell them, hey, you're wrong. Hey, you screwed this up. Hey, you got to fix this. What were you thinking? But, I have to do it in such a way that educates them and makes them think that I'm not being mean to them. So I don't use my words very well.
Yeah, well, it's understanding what the difference, like when you're editing for somebody, like one of the things you realize is they're putting their time and effort into it, right? And also, you're not in charge. You're a glorified advisor. You're like, I am coming into this, right? I can see the forest from the trees, right? Yeah, exactly. That's basically like honestly, if I were to break down an editor's job, really simple, it's 2 things. 1, see the problems. 2, come up with a slightly better way than what the writer came up with to see it. Sometimes it's just like, I actually appreciate a good editor because good editors will tell you exactly where you're screwing. I love learning, and it's one of those things, like, if I get my butt kicked, if it makes sense, I'll take it. Like, right, and that's it. Like, because it's like, okay, you're coming at my ideas, you're not coming after me, right? And that's something I think a lot of writers have to recognize about it. Like, it's not that your story's terrible. It's not any of that. It's like, but your execution here can blow. And that's fine. Honestly, I look, sometimes I suck. I'm okay acknowledging this on the air. It's like, sometimes I suck. Sometimes I'm good. Sometimes I'm great. And sometimes I'm absolutely terrible. Right?
We're all human. We're all going to screw up. Especially when it comes to writing. Being an editor myself, obviously I can't edit my own work. And I will go and give it to my editor and come back and see the mistakes. Be like, I tell people constantly not to do this. Why did I do this? But I appreciate getting it pointed out to me.
Yeah, exactly. And also sometimes what I'll do, and this is something, again, maybe because I'm old and crazy, I'll make mistakes on purpose. Sometimes. Because I learned this like doing this podcast, actually, and this is something I'm playing with a little bit more. Real moments. Like when I've done this show in a coffee shop in the past, I actually have left stuff in, like the waitress coming in and take my order and things of that nature in the past, because it's realer. I find it's not about perfection. It's about how the moment feels. So if the moment, so sometimes I screw up on purpose, and then it's weird to explain. No, I really meant that, and it's like, well, can you explain this error right here? No, that I totally screwed that one up. That's totally on me. But this one was on purpose, I swear.
And sometimes when you're writing fiction, you have to have errors. Mm-hmm. There's so many grammatical errors, especially in dialogue, that you need to leave, because otherwise everyone's going to sound like a robot, or like they're reading from a speech, and that's not what you want.
I think one of the things that throws people off about dialogue in particular is dialogue isn't real. I know that sounds like a really like an oxymoron, but dialogue actually isn't a real conversation like strategy. What if it's a screenplay or a comic, your dialogue's conveying information, right? The best way, right? That's what the dialogue's function is. It conveys the information. Comics, you don't necessarily need to tell the whole story with dialogue, although it's better that your dialogue actually does tie into the story. I don't feel like criticizing a creator by name, but one of the prettiest books I've ever seen, the dialogue did not match anything in the story. It was amazing art. Like it's like first class, like 5-star art. And then I read the script and I'm like, this hurts me just a little bit on the inside that this is the dialogue going in there. Or the worst thing, or sometimes the absolute worst thing in a comic is I'll get a pile of dialogue blocking the pictures, right?
That's one of the worst things. And that's the 80s comics. They had so many of those.
Oh, it's actually, it's the 90s and 2000s as well. There's one particular writer. He's actually a great dialogue writer, but every once in a while he goes off the rails. And I'll see this beautiful page, or at least I think it's a beautiful page, and I'll be like, why did you talk so much? And then the worst part is, and here's the absolute worst part about that story sometimes too, is that's a great moment, but doesn't evolve the story in any great way, right? Like my favorite like comic book era is the late 80s, early 90s, partly because of my age. Shut up, clouds. But also because I think it was the right balance in terms of dialogue storytelling. I think art has evolved so much in the last 30 years that you can do a lot more that way. But in terms of story beats and dialogue, I mean, that was also the era you had Watchmen, you had American Flag, Dark Knight Returns, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Peter David's Hulk run, the early X-Men, like the Claremont Byrne X-Men, which was fantastic, right? There are so many great runs in that time, but they were really good at, when we're talking about dialogue, right? They had this great dialogue that would carry the story. There would be little beats that would go into future issues, but they never detracted from the story in front of you. And you felt like you got a full story more often than not in there. Now, in the modern era, there is kind of a writing for a trade. And I think there are pros and cons to that style. I think one of the big pros is you can tell bigger stories, which I think, which a 22-page comic, there are some limitations on how big the story you can tell. Right. Writing for a trade, you can actually add little details, moments, things in time, and you can do really cool beats that you can't do in the old late 90s style. But there is something to be said about a one and done story. I love one and done stories. I think they're beautiful, beautiful things in comics, and that era excelled at that, like all the way across. And I like what I love about the Kickstarter era in comics right now. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that right now in the Kickstarter era.
Yes, I actually just shared for one that's coming out that it's a anthology of one and dones, and I think Russell Knowles, he's running it, but one of my author friends, she's going to be in it. She's writing her first.
Is it a Cthulhu invades like Neverland, Wonderland kind of thing?
No, it's not going to be a Cthulhu one. It's a fantasy, and I forgot what it is because my brain is just shot. But
No, it's all good. No, I'm Russell Nolte from a professional standpoint is probably one of the best Kickstarter people I've ever seen.
definitely.
Yeah, he's one of the best I've ever seen. Not my favorite. My favorite books in the Kickstarter era I'm really enjoying Rob Terry's stuff right now. Like he's really, really good. I got Kurt Zauer's Spectre Sensibania. I'm also a big fan of the art teams. If you've seen any of my podcasts with Mark Park on Vu, they're a big part of those things, and that's part of the reasons why I like those books so very, very much. Not all, but part of the reason. And I say all that, right? But again, if you look at like those particular, like Russell does it too. Rob Multuri does it. Kirk Zauer does it. A guy I'm a really big fan of is Christopher Moran. He does it too. They do these really good one and done tales, and they're so like they remind me of what comics were like back when I was a kid. God, I'm old.
When I was a kid, I was actually reading those comics from when you were a kid. We're a little more than 10 years apart then. And I love those. Those are my things. And when I was running my blog before I was an author, I got to attend as press the Long Beach Comic-Con and Comic Expo. And I got to interview Marv Wolfman, Len Wein, Chris Claremont, and talk to all of these amazing people about these stories that I grew up reading.
Wolfman is, in my opinion, he's underrated. As scary as it is, he is incredibly underrated. Also, here's the thing most people don't know. He actually wrote the Crisis on Infinite Earths novel too. So if you want to see what his ending of Barry Allen would have been, that's the book to read. It's fantastic.
Yes. Anyone who's watching this, you need to read it.
But even the comic, like, so I got to meet George Perez, right? I actually got to meet George Perez, and so here's my George Perez story. So I'm supposed to. This is 2005. I'm interviewing. He's doing Brave and the Bold with Mark Waid. But he's doing like stuff for the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. I'll never forget this for as long as I live. He's drawing his Zatanna right before I come up to him to interview him, and he goes to me, "Should Zatanna have a top hat?" This is George Perez. I'm not telling him a damn thing about what to draw. I'm not telling him.
Right.
It's the only time I've ever done this answer. What do you think, George? Because what the fuck am I going to tell him? Right?
How do you tell George Perez what to draw? That's not even.
No. It's like that's the again. But he had this like the cool thing. I met him and I talked to him and I just would see him. He would look at a picture. And he would get this idea in his head of what he could do with it. And he would like war with himself. Should he or shouldn't he? And it was oddly one of the most adorable things I've ever seen in my life. Like he was legitimately one of the sweetest people I've ever met in the industry. Like legitimately. And yeah, so I got to meet the other half of that team. And that's another guy that doesn't get enough credit from that era too. Like George Perez, he did Teen Titans. He did Crisis on Infinite Earths, both with Mark Wolfman. But he also relaunched Wonder Woman. One of Wonder Woman's best runs is the Perez run. It's not the best, in my opinion. Actually, you know what? It might be the best run of that era for Wonder Woman. Like it might be the absolute best run of that era of Wonder Woman is the Perez stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
Yeah. So I mean, and he wrote it. He didn't just draw it. He wrote it. It's good shit. It still holds up today. Like it still does. So like I said, he died this year, unfortunately, and it was sad, but it was also like I got the chance to meet him, which is actually something that I like. Wolfman is someone on my list of people I would love to meet and also have on the show because he's just, again, most people don't realize, like, if you go to watch any of the animated shows or any of the movies, he created most of these characters.
Yes, and that's why he had said he was surprised when Arrow was running, they credited him.
Yeah.
And he said most shows wouldn't do that. And he was really surprised when that happened. But when I was interviewing him, time had run out on one of his panels. So he was doing an extra signing. So I was sitting there interviewing him. He was signing in between. So I had the recorder out. And he kept introducing me to people. Like, yeah, this is the blog. And she's going to have me on. Like, Why are you introducing me to people? You're
Because
the celebrity.
he's a good human being, and you're right there, and it's like, what's going on? So he's just like being like chill about it. It's like, hey, this is Lily, she's awesome, and which you are, and I'm gonna have right, and then I'm gonna have you like, and yeah, why not? I mean, people are there to see it, but you know what? Why not? Why not help somebody else while you're there? I mean, that's a good dude. Like, that's a really, really good dude.
And he's someone when it comes to writing characters, he was able to write, especially their thoughts when he did the narration, so well. I
Yeah.
took a lot of that into my novel writing.
No,
Despite me writing third person for the most part, I took a lot of that and learned a lot from him. When
I
people ask me where a lot of my inspiration comes from, I list a few authors, and I also list comic books. And people are always surprised. It's like, you have no idea the great writing you miss out on because you think comics are just for kids.
Okay, my favorite writer from that era is John Ostrander, but he's my second favorite is Wolfman. Because again, he's one of the best characters, especially I think his Teen Titans run in particular shows just how good he really was and is. Honestly, it's actually, I'm sometimes shocked he doesn't do more comic work today. Legitimately, like he's again, he is one of those people that DC owes a lifelong bit of gratitude for, just for everything he's done. Like, everybody talks about Mornock, Gaiman, and rightfully so. Gaiman Sandman runs awesome, right? Legitimately, again, that era of like books that were coming out from all these different guys were great. But yeah, Wolfman was like one of those guys that you look at and go, well, damn, like you're the man. Like, you really, really are.
I mean, there would be so many characters, storylines that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for him and George Perez.
Judas Contract is one of the best. Like
that was the first thing I ever read.
Oh, really? Wow, yeah. That's a high bar. Right? That's a really high bar to come into, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there are very few comic books that could measure up ever since.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, especially like regular one. Yeah, it's very hard. Okay, book wise, what were you into? Because you like me and you have similar tastes in comics, I can tell. So let's see if we get similar tastes in books too.
I was the weird kid who, by 8 years old, was begging her mother to buy her the Edgar Allan Poe collection and Dracula hardbacks and the Bronte sisters. And then as I got older, when I should have been leaving YA, I went to YA. So I love the weird YA, like as it's known in America, the Cirque du Freak series, Saga of Darren Shan.
Okay.
Is one of my absolute biggest inspirations. I remember reading it. I was 12 when I first found it. And I'm like, as I went through the series, I'm like, this is some violent shit. And it was in the 8+ section.
Yeah,
I loved it. And I went from that, I went to his Demonatus series, and that's a lot of the violence that I enjoyed writing came from him. Actually, I wanted dedicating one of my books to him because the plotline would not have existed had I not read the Saga of Darren Shan.
So, see, here's the thing. I think horror and YA go together like peanut butter and jelly. Like, I really do. Like, I feel like they're the same piano key. Like, it's the same piano. And that's how I look at it. Like, YA, like most classic YA, we'll see the rom-com stuff for like as an aside for this. But like most of the story stuff is if lots of bright, like really, really cool kids faced with like a really dark adult situation. That's usually the best YA. So if you look at it from piano keys, like a bunch of white keys with a little bit of dark. Horror is the opposite. It's a bunch of black keys with a little bit of white. You want that little bit of real world in horror. You need a little bit of it, because if you don't have it, what happens is, I don't mind if unless it's fun. If it's fun, it's a little different. You can go. If you're just going in for campy fun, you can ignore all that. But if you're going for like genuine horror, terrifying stuff, there has to be a moment in a horror story where it can feel like it could happen. At least a little bit. Like that, right? There has to be something about it that feels utterly human. If it's not,
there has to be something that pulls at the heartstrings a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're emotionally invested.
Yeah, and I find with what like YA plays with the same heartstrings. So what tends to happen is, I find good horror writers are also great kids authors, and vice versa. Kids authors are actually great horror authors. You would be amazed how many YA people I tend to talk to. The topics tend to go to murder, violence, and mayhem. It's like, oh, it's like, you're like, I heart to. Like, I had a conversation with a cosplayer, and we just talked about murder for an hour. It's like, Okay.
I could be one of those people. I wrote the Coven series, which is my only official YA right now. I have a YA novella. It's actually horror coming out in January. But when I wrote that, there's torture scenes and there's violence, there's kidnappings, there's stabbings. There's someone gets electrocuted at one point. And it's fun. I enjoy all of that stuff. But I enjoy writing it on a scale where kids can enjoy it too.
See, I had a theory. Uh like how do I put this all honestly? It's like I kind of feel like when I used to wonder like why my ancestors would scalp their enemies. And then having conversation like this, I understood it. I finally understood. It's like, why would you do that? Press a check. It's the only reason I'm doing this. It's like I don't like it, but she does, and I'm not entirely sure why. But there's just something about that violence, mayhem, and murder. And I discovered a very interesting aspect of the human race when I realized that it's like, yeah, there's just a big portion of us that enjoys the violence, death, and carnage of things. Just there's a little bit of that watching the world burn thing that we all have. I think some have it more than others. Shrug, but I mean. But it's one of those things where I just realized, like, no, there's a little bit of part of us that enjoys destruction.
Yes. Yes. It's very difficult to create. It's easy to destroy. So I think that's another thing that's easier to, which is the same reason there are more fans than there are creators of things. It's easier to consume something or to take it down than it is to build it up.
It's funny. I've gotten to a very interesting point in terms of building things down, building things up. I feel like in some ways it's like, then maybe this is because I'm old and curmudgeonly. I don't know. It's just that I no longer care if someone tries to tear it down. It's like I look at it more. This sounds like a really almost cynical. It's like I can make money off you because you right. I look, and then this sounds. I know that sounds really cynical, but I had a epiphany of all things watching both Howard Stern and Donald Trump. Hey, Anita. Anita says hi. Hey, welcome to the show. Feel free to join in on our conversation about murder and mayhem. Right. But I learned this about Howard Stern and I learned this about Donald Trump. They polarize people. And I realized what they fed off of is the people that disliked them more than the people that liked them. Howard Stern, when at his heyday, had more people who disliked him listen to him longer than the people who liked him. And Trump, when he was president, I heard more from the people who hated Trump than the people who loved him. It was kind of one of those things where I just realized, yeah, absolutely. I hate that. I've read Anita's books. I have no doubt about that at all.
She's still on my TBR list. I've done a few panels and interviews with her, and she's awesome.
No, Anita is actually a great writer. She really, really is. I think she's one of my favorite reads this year. Now me and her she wrote an Alice in Wonderland story. I write an Alice in Wonderland series. So kind of was like, that's why she recommended me her book, that for short story collection. But no, she is incredibly talented as a writer and actually probably one of my favorite people. So there, Anita, that's what I think of you. You're awesome.
You're not living up to the asshole image, by the way.
Oh, I don't. I enjoy building people up. I can be a prick, but I generally don't. Again, it's one of those things. You get older, you learn how to stand up for yourself. But if you don't have to, why? You know what I mean?
My thing was always, as long as you show me respect, I'll show it to you. But you don't want to lose my respect and see me become that other side. You don't.
Yeah. I feel you just hideously beating people and taking their lunch money. I just somehow see that being the thing there.
So on a quote somewhere.
Yeah, no.
Chelsea.
Lunch money. Well, see, actually, I'll tell you something too. Like next year, when the podcast turns 1,000 episodes, I am planning on getting like a van, like a Mr. Machine style van, and traveling across both countries and actually meeting people in person. That's actually kind of that's the plan for the show post episode 1,000. It might not be right after episode 1,000, but around there, I'm going to start going look like I'm changing where the show goes. And one of the things I'm going to do, like as a personal little thing. So I'm a big fan of one modern comic artist today is Kaylin Smith. She does some really great stuff. If I recommend Plume, that's a phenomenal book. So but she's got like this evil scowl. And the first time I saw it, it's like, so if I saw that in person, I probably just would give you my wallet and possibly my ATM card because I wouldn't want to deal. I don't want to deal with that. But I had this idea for a joke because, and this the idea is like she would legitimately shake me down. Like we actually have a picture of me upside down somewhere where she looks like she's shaking me down. Now here's the joke. Now here's the reason. That's the first picture. The second picture is Canadian. It like especially with the Canadian dollar being what it is right now. She's just basically stealing loonies and toonies. So she actually picks up and scoffs at the fact that she just robbed a guy of Canadian money that she can't do anything with in the United States. And I see her laughing at this whole concept. The other thing about me too is I'm silly as fuck. Like just like I don't know if Joe had said about you, but I am legitimately one of the sillier people out there. I do things for my own amusement, and I find it amuses other people as well. So, but. All of which to say is you might be the second person to take my lunch money, but I just got to warn you of the Canadian money.
I'll leave you alone then. I'll spare you.
I'll spare you. I don't want your Canadian money. It's heavy and awkward.
I had someone tell me once, it was an ex, and he said, I'm not going to piss you off. I'm like, why aren't you going to piss me off? He's like, I know better. You'd skin me, wouldn't you? I'm like, I'm good with knives. I had another ex. He, my mom went to have, the talk with him, be good to my daughter. And she told me after, he said, Miss Smith, I'm going to be good to her. And she's like, why, are you afraid of me? He's like, no, I'm afraid of her.
That's just wisdom. That's just
I never did anything to make people afraid of me, but apparently I have this look on my face a lot, like I'll kill you.
No, see, it's not even that. Like, okay, look, straight up. This is the impression I get. You are nice and sweet, but I would not want to piss you off. That is literally that's literally the impression I get with you. Would not want to piss you off. You might be the person that runs me over with your car and just drives away, right? You might be that person, but
I would have to pay someone. I don't drive.
I think if you were angry enough, you'd figure it out. Like you'd have one of those moments where it's like, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to do this. I don't care. The car might be a complete wreck, but you won't give a shit in that moment. Right. So, all right. Right. So all of which to say that, no, but the thing is, it's actually a little, like I realize this, if I'm dating somebody, right. And she is sleeping in my bed, right. I better have a little iota of respect for her, because if I don't, she could legitimately kill me, right? Like, legitimately, right? And this is one of those things. Like, don't get me wrong. I like, and the thing is, women aren't just like these sweet. Like, there's honestly, no woman's a trophy, right? They can be pretty, they can be sweet, they can be kind. That's just
no human. Period.
No, exactly. Right? No, no human being is just a trophy or just a thing. They're a person. But like if I have a girlfriend, I'm going to remember to keep this in mind, because it's also for my help. She's right there. She can do things to me. It's just there's wisdom in that, right? I'm going to respect the person I'm with because she's with me, right? And I want her to stay with me, not just because I love her, but because if she goes against me, I might be in trouble, like legit. Right? So
it's so nice actually hearing a man say all of this, because it's usually us where we have to say, we have to be careful, because obviously we know the violence rate against women, and especially against if there's trans women or non-binary like me, there's all huge. So it's so nice actually hearing a man say that he has these feelings of slight fear as well, because it kind of shows that things maybe can even out one day.
Well, okay, so this is an interesting one. How do I put this? Okay, so I'm from, my grandmother, like at 13, started raising her brothers, took care of her dad a little bit because her mom died. So I've always been around strong women. Like my grandmother's a very strong woman, and very strong-willed woman too. So it's one of those things, like one of the things I've learned I learned, at least in my family, is I realized this very early on. It's generally, I have learned that big decisions are very quietly made by the woman. So now, guy doesn't always know this, but the woman is usually the one that makes the decisions. And I realized at a very young age, it's like, oh, this is how this works. the big thing about our culture, and this is something I've learned as I've again gotten older slash wiser ish, we'll say ish, is no one recognizes their worth, and that's something that no one teaches you. And I think both sexes express that in different ways until they get hopefully to that point where they just don't give a shit no more. Right. But I think what I noticed when I was in my younger days is that I found women in their late teens, early 20s, generally speaking, have no self-esteem. And they have to kind of figure out what their worth is. Now, it's not true with every woman, but every woman it's a very common thing. Guys don't have that self-esteem
as well.
What?
Your generation as well. And mine, I think, has been one of the last ones. Because now, my generation's starting to have kids, and, there's Gen Z, which is not much further under me. And they're being raised in a very different environment where they know their worth right off the bat.
Well,
so a lot of what you encountered, we're not going to be encountering, hopefully, anymore, which I think is awesome.
It will be different. I think there's again, there are things they have and there are things they don't. Like, I kind of just feel like it goes both ways on that one. And it's like, again, our generations, those worth values, those esteem issues were very different than what's coming up. Now, hopefully they're wiser than us in other ways.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. But I all right, as far as the relationship curve of things, but we are seeing a changing of how the working world works, how careers work, how centralization, decentralization is changing everything, including publishing. And it's one of those things where you have to think about things differently now than we did, which is good because what we thought was silly. Now, what I've learned in my life is whatever's leading the generation today is hopefully not as silly as the generation that led us, because they were pretty dumb. And one of those things, like, I think there comes a point, and I think this is true even with the generations coming, you have to figure out what works for you. Very rarely do people figure that out in their 20s. Now, their 30s, you start really figuring that out. Now, when you get to 40, like me, right, I'm terrified. Like, I got here faster than dead. I don't give a shit now. Like, when I get even older and wiser, like when I get to 50, I might be like the biggest monster on the planet. I don't know. I could be like one of those like nightmares. It's like, I just do what I want. And that's it. And that's all I worry about. Right.
Morph into Godzilla. Just destroy
it's entirely a possibility. It's entirely a possibility. Again, one of those things that I mentioned earlier, I've learned how to balance being a nice guy with, being willing to stand up for myself against anything. Right. And that's the thing. It's literally anything. So but that took me a long time to get there. Right. And I think that's part of the growth aspect. If I were to actually, I think, again, I was just thinking about this honestly. So I'm looking at it from my generation, maybe younger, they maybe got it better. And if you do, awesome, you rock, and you should be teaching us. But knowing your worth at a young age and willing to go and fight and get it. If I were to break down that, I actually think for the Western world, that might be one of the biggest problems in the world today is they're trying to devalue that worth. And we're having to fight for it going forward. Does that make sense? Am I on something?
Yes, something? I completely agree. And how you said, like, how as you get older, you discover your worth. In a way, I almost think that's better, because with me, I sort of had to go and fight for it. I was shoved into it. There was incidents that I don't talk about anymore that happened in the publishing world with me, and lies and all of these things. And I had to be shoved to fight, like the Virgin Catholic. I had to be shoved to fight for my worth, my work's worth, both as an editor and especially as a writer and as a human being. And that was a very difficult thing, at 26 years old at the time. So I found my worth by being pushed into it. And not that I wasn't taught to, my mother always taught me how worthy, how great. I just had some issues where I didn't believe it and didn't really feel like pushing for it. And then I got shoved, without a choice into it. And in a way I hated it, but in a way it's also a good thing because it's enabled me to be the businesswoman and the author that I am now.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I had some of my own little crucibles at 26, 27 years old, and I'm like, it made me who I am today. I'm grateful. But sometimes you wish it could have been a little easier going through that process. Sometimes you're just like, but would you have been the same person though? And that's a hard question to ask, isn't it?
It is. It is, and especially what I've gone through this past year, just from October 2021 till, I would give anything for none of it to have happened. And people are going to hear me say this and they're going to think I'm really callous and absolutely horrible. Everything does have a purpose. It does have a time and a place where it has to happen. Even if it is the worst possible thing on the planet, it still has to happen sometimes.
I changes. I just mentioned this today. I noticed you've been liking a lot of my motivational stuff for the last little bit, so thank you. But one of the things I say is change is inevitable. Good things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. I tend to think there's a reason for everything too. I do have that belief. But just for the sake of argument, let's say there isn't. Let's say just for the sake of this, I would say next is it's what you do with it. It's how you handle those changes and how you have a choice with everything that happens to you in your life. And again, we all have breaking points. We all fall, and that's fine. And that's life too. I'm not, again, your reaction is your reaction. But I've been trying to freelance for the last 2 years. Every good thing that's happened to me has been awesome, and I celebrate it. Every bad thing, I try to find a good that comes from it, because life very much is a head game. How you see it very much determines where you can go. And I've learned this a long time ago, and I look at people who go, well, it's so hard to exist and stuff's like, I don't have that luxury. If I want to go for something, I must look at things different and be different. It's the only way I'm going to get the opportunities I really want out of life, right? And when I hit my 50s, Anita, I might not have quite the same energy to get off the couch, but by that point, I'm still going to pick and choose my fights, and I'm going to definitely probably find myself. It's the Maltese in me. I'm probably going to find ways to get into fights even in my 50s. My grandma got into fights until her 60s, so I got a little piss and vinegar still in me somewhere, somehow, some way. So
it sounds like my grandmother. She had her attitude right until she passed away at 61. You could not stop that woman, and you did not want to cross that woman.
But again, it's what she needed. Like, again, one of the things again, you look at things when you're younger, you say, I'm going to try to be all this nice and good. That's again, the balance. You have to be willing to learn how to stand, which goes back to something I said to you, like when you talked about your mid-20s. Would you be as tough if you hadn't gone through those things? And, because that toughness, like where other people might break, whatever. Okay. Is that all I got?
Like, that's all you've got? Come on, I can beat you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, if I hadn't gone through all of that, I'd probably still be a doormat, honestly, for a lot of things and a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. And, I actually, before doing this, I had my therapy appointment, and my therapist does the same thing to me every month. Mm-hmm. And she says, most people in your position, with what you've lost and how, would not be able to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not how my mother raised me. Well, I was not taught to give up. I was not taught to hide and cower from the bad. I was taught, this bad thing happened, you got to deal with it now.
I had a buddy when I was working at Pure Later, when I was still working there. And I did a way back in the day. I talked sort of about how I lost my top teeth in a podcast. It was like episode 140. And I had a buddy, he actually listened to it, and he goes, dude, kudos to you. You kept your dreams. Most people would have walked away after what you went through, right? And yeah, like, life hits hard sometimes. It just does. And can you get up the next day? I mean, that's it. It sounds really fucking simple, but sometimes it's the hardest thing. But sometimes separates the diamonds from dust. It really does.
It does, exactly. I mean, like I said, it's so easy to give in. It's so easy to cry and say, why me? It's
Yep.
so easy to just linger in the past or linger in the sorrow, and you can't. And the more you fight for your happiness and the more you fight for your future, the better you do get inside, in your heart, your soul, your mind, whatever you
Yep.
want to see it.
I will say though, it's okay if you take a moment to mourn it. It's okay to feel sorry
Yes.
for yourself for a minute. It's okay. I like, yeah. Let yourself
Schedule your pity. Schedule your
Yeah,
pity parties.
yeah. Well,
I mean, I'll
I
sit
wouldn't say.
there when I
Well, but
cry. I will actually, I'll see how long, and I will stop myself.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, it's done. Pity party's done. You have shit to do. Let's go.
it's the way it has to be sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And someone will go, yes, that's tough. It's like it is, but life doesn't care, right?
Nope.
That's it. Life doesn't care, and I've learned this too. It's like like life keeps happening, and either I mean, again, we all need our moments to where we like if this was a boxing fight, sometimes we need to sit on our stool for that standing 8 count for a little bit, but once it gets to 8, you got to get up.
Yep.
Because
Exactly.
the fight's still on, and I mean, it gets tiring. Some days you do feel tired, but other days you're like, "Hey, man, that's the way it is." I realized for me that it's always going to be a struggle. So then the question then becomes, do I enjoy the struggle? And if the answer is yes, then okay, let's go. Right. Now, if it sucks, then this is where we're getting older and hopefully wiser. It's better. If it absolutely sucks, I quit. And I'm okay. I'm okay with that,
Yeah, my thing is, if it absolutely sucks, what can I do to change it? Is it
Yep.
walking away from whatever it is? Is it changing this tactic? Is it whatever?
Yeah.
I figure it out.
Yeah, and that's it. Like that's the thing. Like and I say this, like it's not when it's hard. Hard's different. Sometimes you just got to go through a process. When it just legitimately sucks, you feel like you're getting nothing out of it. It's time to make some changes. It's like, okay, well, do I do it this way? Do I do it this way? Fuck it. Do I do it this way? Or do I just walk away? Is this worth it for me anymore? And again, as you get older, and this goes, but this is where I think the couch thing comes at. Is it worth my energy to get off the couch? Is it worth my energy to put this time in? And I think you get more discerning as you get older because you realize you have less time. Whatever that is. Like I feel like I still got plenty of time, but it's not going to be too long before I'm not going to want to travel anymore. It's not going to be that long before I'm going to like, you know what? I'm going to settle down in this like crazy little like beach somewhere and probably get in trouble for hitting on women half my age, but that's okay at that point. I won't care anymore, and get in trouble for that and all that other wonderful fun stuff and just do my thing. But I mean, that's like there will come a point where the energy like this is, and I realize too, when you get to 50s, your energy changes. When you get to 60, your energy changes. When you get to 70, your energy changes, right? But so I mean, I think one of the hardest things I've realized is I'm looking now to do what I love, because the last thing I want to do is something that feels unbearable.
And for me, dealing with what I went through this year, and there's a quote, and I'm paraphrasing because it's not the direct translation. We're not guaranteed tomorrow, so right now you have to live.
Mm-hmm.
Because I hear you talking, like about being almost 40, Anita in your 50s. We're not guaranteed going into our 50. We're not guaranteed the next 10 seconds.
No,
so we have to do what makes us happy and makes us better every second.
Yeah. Well, that's it. There's only now. So what do you want to do? What do you want to do?
It's another, again, not direct exact translation. Your last reason for standing on the edge of a cliff, live.
Yeah.
That's it. We're all technically on the edge of a cliff. We got to live.
Yep.
We got to live until we're pushed off. Because I'm not going over voluntarily. Life's got to push me.
Yeah, well, actually, it was interesting for me. I had that opportunity. If I had wanted to take that leap, I could have, and I wouldn't have been. It was a weird like moment in my life, and that's when I realized that I was mortal. Right, that was absolutely mortal, and it was like, hey, one day I'm not gonna walk away from this one day. And it was a really really surreal moment of like clarity. It's like, if I can just keep going where I'm going, and I'm going to meet this end, and I know I'm going to meet this end. I'm not sure what's going to happen exactly, but that's the end I'm going to meet. And I realized this, and it was like, whoa, like, okay, right? And it was weird because it wasn't like this fire and vengeful judgment. It's just, I think like life does afford us different, interesting kinds of mercies and compassions at different points too. And then I just came to the decision when my time finally does come, whenever it happens, whether it's tomorrow or whether I'm 120 or somewhere in the middle, somewhere, somehow, some way. I'm either going to do one of two things. I'm going to do what they did in Persona 3, the video game, or I'm going to just like smile and just join it. It'll be time. Like it'll just be time at that point, and I'll know it. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go yet. It depends on when it happens, I think, for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I've been unfortunately thinking about a lot, and it's just I want to make sure that I'm not regretting a thing. That's the only thing. And that's the only thing that I think that's what happiness is no regrets.
Yep. Stupid piles of mistakes. I'm going to make them all. Right? Some dumb ones. I make them every day.
As long as nobody gets hurt, just you got to make your choice.
You try.
Be happy.
You try. I think how to put this. There's been mistakes I made that have hurt other people, and I regret. And that's the closest to regrets I do have, because it's just one of those like I wish I'd done some things differently, but at the same time, I wouldn't be who I am without learning from those mistakes too.
Yep.
Right. And you know, what I realize is, and for those people in particular, if they feel the way they feel about me, I don't blame them, because I understand I hurt them. I didn't mean to, but I hurt them. And that's the thing. Like, I think, you know, and those things are going to happen too. And then again, I'm not trying to justify or not justify. It's just more like you're what I try to do is I try not to hurt people, and I try to be kind. But I also realize that even so, sometimes shit happens.
You can't control someone else's reaction to you.
No.
These are good. You can't control how they take them and how that may affect someone.
Well, I go like this. There are three things. There are three things when things happen to people, and it is intentions, impact, interpretation. So intentions, my intentions can be great, and really you can't argue whatever my intentions are. I can't deny the impact of what I've done too. I cannot. Well, whatever that, all that's really left to discuss after that is what happened. How do you see it? How do I see it? Do you want to make amends, or don't you want to make amends? And there are situations, and again, we're not for everybody. And that's something I realized too, as well as we're not for everybody, and we all change and we all grow. So what I do instead, what I worry about now is I try to be kind to everybody. I try not to hurt anybody, but I also recognize that I'm going to make mistakes in this life. You know what I mean? And I can only do my best, and I'm going to try not to beat myself up too hard with anything else, if that makes sense. Try not to. Right?
I mean, mistakes are inevitable, and all that matters most is that we learn from them.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing with writing. It's the same thing that I've told my clients. I actually had one client who messaged me, and she asked me, will I ever stop making the same mistake? You know, it's something you've had to edit out of my books a few times. And I said, I used to make the same mistake you did when I was my very first 2 books. Both of them had huge sections that needed to be rewritten because of the mistake I made. It took me a long time to get out of it. This was before I was editing. And you have to learn from your mistakes. That's it. You know, whether it's a big life mistake, whether it's a mistake you're constantly making while you're writing your novel, learn from them. Don't just be complacent to where you are and say, oh, well, whatever, it happened. Yep. Sit with them, sit with yourself, and try and make yourself better.
Yep. Your shit stinks, folks. Everybody's shit stinks. And you have to be honest about it. Now, you may not notice all the things you do, because that's impossible, right? Until some moments arrive. Then you've got to be honest with what you see in the mirror. And that's just, and for everybody, that's a different answer. That's a different way of looking at things. But yeah, at the end of the day, you got to be honest with yourself. Like, what are you saying? What do you actually want in this moment? And it's something I've learned. Even when I'm writing my stories, I'm like, okay, I'm trying not to make the same mistakes. I'm trying to go for most resonance in terms of emotions and page turning and all that stuff. Probably vary too much. Probably. Right. Probably. And you know, that's just the way it is. Like you try to fix those mistakes, you try to look, and yeah, you're never going to be perfect. Writing, life, whatever. And but again, it's just ultimately at the end of the day, it's just about doing the best you can.
That's it. And making sure that you're doing things with the right intention.
Yep. Yep.
You know, as long as you can go to sleep with yourself at night, that's what matters. And that's a topic that I've touched on a few times, where Angelica, my very first character, she's constantly at war. Did I do this right? Was I too tough? Should I not have killed this person? Should I not have? It's like, at the end of the day, you got to live with whatever you did wrong, including the murders that she did out of bloodlust rather than justice. And, you know, she also has to worry, she crossed the line. Am I killing because of justice, or am I still killing because of just making an excuse? But at the end of the day, even if she can't know that fact, she does know that she's doing her best. And even if her best sometimes means losing control, she's still doing it. And that's something that I tried to do a lesson for myself while writing her. I mean, thankfully, my lessons don't involve, you know, murder, but you know, it's the same thing that we have for ourselves. Are doing our best? You know.
Yeah, and you know, try to do your best. Try to again learn from your mistakes. Be open to the possibility that you're wrong, right? Although I actually my novels right now, it too has a lot of murder, although it's a little bit different. I'm killing human beings or semi-human beings or whatever the case may be. I turned the Knights of the Round Table. I made them all twisted. Percival's like the biggest used car salesman ever now. It's like, because he would be, like, he legitimately would be, and I'm having fun. I'm having fun, like, building up towards his comeuppance right now, right? My character is more like, I would say, Kate Daniels than say, or Parker than say a good quote unquote the traditional good guy. But at the same time, like, what she's arguing is, like, her whole thing is, what is a good person? Like, what is this? Can someone who has tried their damnedest to kill their conscience grow something new and different on the inside? And can you become a good person, whatever that actually looks like? And I can't wait till actually the third novel, where she actually meets one of the knights that goes, "Are like, you'll never be a good person, no matter what you do," right? And that's the truth he's embraced. And I'm not going to say who it is, but it's basically that's right. So, what is a good person? But you can, like I said, but you can always do your best, whether it's writing a book, whether it's editing a project, or doing a video like I'm doing, or yeah, just be the best person you possibly can be, whatever that looks like, day in and out.
Right. And I do think that, unfortunately, especially when you think about books, when you think about real life, is people find it much easier to not be a good.
Yes.
And you see it so often that you do sometimes wonder, are there good people? Then you turn around and like, yes, there are good people. It's just the assholes drown them out so much, which is what brings us to these discussions. But one of the things, I read this once, and I don't remember, it was the characters talking, and they said, if you're sitting there asking, am I a good person? If you care, then yes, you are. Because truly bad people don't care.
Again, as I've done these interviews and stuff like that, again, there are people I like, and I realize this too. The last subject is, do I agree with them or not? And can I disagree with somebody and still think they're a good person? Right. And that's actually the other thing too. Like, the last 2 years have taught me more than anything else that the ideas of what a good person a lot of people think is and necessarily what actually is a good person are two things. Are you trapped in your ideas or ideals? And will that and when they meet the real world, can you adjust and change? Right? Even if we completely disagree about stuff. There are people, again, I've had guests on here I've had discussions with, and I'm like, I don't really agree with the damn thing you're saying right now. But this is what you believe. And on the flip side, you do all kinds of really cool shit that I have to admire and aspire to be. So I look at it. Just to add to one layer is I have gotten to the point where I am old enough and big enough to accept the fact that there are things about people that may seem asshole-ish, right? But I also don't always see the good that they do in other places, right? So
right. I think it depends on what makes them asshole-ish. Like how you said, one of your own rules for here is don't be a bigot.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the rule in life. And I was raised with the things like, as you really read through parts of the Bible, I think the biggest sin is hate. There is no reason. So I don't care if you are, the next Mother Teresa. If you're hating somebody for no reason, then you are not a good person.
Well, yeah. Okay. Bible. So to me, I think the most evil thing, if you really look at it like from the biblical standpoint, most evil thing, the evilest people in the Bible, if you really look at that, were the Pharisees in the New Testament, right? And I think go in something you said earlier. It's that self-righteousness, that virtual signaling. I've talked about this on a few conversations here. I never put a circle on any of my Facebook things. I don't. I just state who I am with everything I do, and I let people make their own decisions. I don't go, what about me? What about this cause, this cause, this cause? And there are people that do it for very specific reasons. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people that do it every single time, right? And it's just like,
that's all they do.
Exactly.
I'm gonna put this performative post up, and I'm gonna make you think I'm such a good person, but in reality, I'm either voting for people who are going to hurt you, or I'm not going to care or going to do anything else about it.
Yeah.
That's a horrible thing, and that's so many. I heard someone call it the middle-aged white woman syndrome.
Well,
that's the majority of who does it, especially in a suburban area where it's not, the world doesn't affect them. So they just go and put it up on Facebook and think that makes them a good person. No, it's not. That's not what makes you a good person. Sharing something on Facebook, making you a good person is trying to, if this is a cause that you believe in, actually doing something.
Yeah.
Putting up a picture is not going to help anybody.
Well, that's just it. Like if you go look at the Bible, top to bottom, right? That's the biggest sin in the whole damn thing, right? God frowns at idol worship, but he does say there's a time for everything. Like, there's a time for hate, there's a time to kill, there's a time for, so like these things are there for a reason sometimes, right? But the one thing that gets universally flayed upon, right, is that kind of virtual signaling. Like that's the thing that made Jesus turn the tables. That's the thing that made him bring the whip out and that's the stuff that got, like, that's what pissed him off more than anything else.
Yeah.
Right. Everything else, like there was I'm not saying it was all gravy in there, but everything else in there was a moment. It's like, you know what, like fornication's illegal, but on the same time, there are stories in the Bible about people from Israel hiding with people that are in the whorehouses and things of that nature. So it's like, you know what? There are some things I'm not justifying anything one way or the other. I'm just saying there are some things I think God looks a little bit harder upon than others. And if you look at that, it's like, that's it. That virtual signaling crap. That's the worst.
And harming children. That's repeated a few times in the Bible in different ways. Yeah. And those are the only things. And those are the things that do the most.
Yeah. No, it's true. I love the so Jesus breaks the 10 commandments down to 3. It's believe in God, honor thy neighbor, love thy brother. The third one's the one I struggle with the most. It is the third one. Right? For believe in God, I can do that. Honor thy neighbor, I totally get it. Because that again, there are people that see the world differently than you. There are people that will not agree with you. There are people that will always look at things differently. And you know what? That's cool. You don't have honor thy neighbor. Let them live. Live and let live. I totally get that. Christians, I see absolute worst sometimes when it comes to like some of the most horrible things I've ever seen have come from other Christians. Like, love thy brother. It's like, I struggle with that one. I will. Sometimes I just look at it and go, how do you do this? How do you?
I don't know if you do the personality types, the MBTI, but mine has never changed since I was 18 years old, and I'm the INFJ. And what the basic summary of that is you want to save the world, but you hate people. You hate humanity. It's like, yeah, that's right. I find it very difficult with the love my brother.
INE for me. I switch sometimes between, depending on the day. I'm on INFJ or on an ENFJ. So I'm one of those. So sometimes I save the world and I love people, and some days I save the world and I hate them. Which, considering what I do, that actually makes sense, right? That actually does make sense. I care about people, but sometimes, but no, like I still remember my first autograph signing, right? My first autograph signing, I talk about the story about the arrows, but the other story I don't talk about, what I remember too, is we had two guys that were claimed to be Christian, and the guy running the store believed in something else. And at first, they were talking about God, and he was in the conversation, and eventually, though, they were pushing and pushing and pushing, and they had this attitude that they were better than him because they believed in God and he didn't. Like, not at least not the way that they did. And I'm watching this, and I'm watching this evolve. And finally, I step in. It's like, no, man, this ain't right. Right? You can't do this to this person because they just see the world differently than you do.
Right.
Right. And it's like, but again, this is something I've seen. Again, this is not the worst egregious example I've ever seen with Christians. But I've seen this a lot. I am better than you because I believe in God, and you don't. It's like, no, you're not better than me. If I can even says in the Bible, no, right?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
They haven't properly read most of what they believe in, which is part of the reason I haven't been to church in years. Yeah. But I take so much of quote unquote biblical learning and put it in my books, and a lot of people don't realize it.
Oh yeah.
Because unfortunately, I've gotten the opposite of what you had seen. I get I'm better than you because I don't believe in God. I've had a lot of people, and I never come to these people, on my end and say anything. They're always coming in my face in the same way they hate it if they were to have that happen to them. And it's like, none of you are being decent human beings right now. And people wonder why I'm always alone, right?
Well. Okay, so I think my favorite part about this is I'm having a discussion right now with a friend of mine on Instagram. We just go back and forth every so often, right? And she's an atheist. She was a Christian, but she was an atheist, and I can definitely see why the church. She told me what she was, and I can kind of see why the church burned her out. It just did. I could totally see it. But at the same time, we're arguing. Like, now we're arguing about the religion of like what she believes now versus what she believed then, and all of which to say is like, we're having just a discussion, and that I don't mind. Like that's totally a very different. People have beliefs. People want to talk about beliefs. We can do that. We can have that conversation, communication, and understanding, right? I'm doing this with her because, again, she wants to have that discussion, and if she didn't want to have that discussion, I'd walk away. Right.
Right. It's when they get on the soapbox that's a problem.
Well, okay. So like for me, the gun issue, like the shootings that happened earlier this year. You have problems with guns, but I think that's a fair assessment. I don't know what your solution is at this point. I don't know what to do about it at this point. You kind of. That old genie's been out of the bottle. Your genie's been out of the bottle so long that he's had kids, and and they're right. Like that's like, and I say this like a joke, but that's like, I don't know an easy solution to your gun problem. Right? I don't. There's not an easy answer. Doing a law isn't good enough at this point, and I don't know. I mean, you have to do something because this is crazy, but I don't know what the right perfect answer is. I have my thoughts, but let's be honest, I could be wrong.
Like
right?
you said, the genie has had babies. There's even if there was, a complete gun ban like other countries have, even if we were to do like Japan, where they have to go, I think, every 6 months and recertify to own a gun. And that's just a handgun, of course, not, semi-automatics.
Oh yeah.
It's too late for America.
There's
too many of them. No way are they going to get this. They could prevent new sales, but they can't prevent what people have already got. And what they're going to sell illegally and what they're going to import, from Russia or Colombia or wherever. So
it's also the fact. It's also
a moot point right now.
It's also the fact that it's like you got just in illegal guns, you got like 20 to 1 almost every other country in the world. So even if you got rid of them tomorrow, like it'd be about 20 years before that all disappeared.
Yeah.
Just right now, it's about 20. It take about 20 years. So there's no easy solution anymore. But I remember like going on Facebook and just watching so many, again, that soapbox. Well, we did it. This is a god, blah, 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 blah. It's like, this is not useful or helpful in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, there are lines. Like, again, believe what you want. I'm good with it. We can talk about it. I'm good with it too. But yeah, I've learned in this. I've learned as I've gotten older / wiser. I don't have easy answers, and I think the best answer is kind of let people let the world sort it out, sort of. But I don't know, right? I don't know.
One of the things I've had kind of tossed at me, and I've had it both, on my Facebook, and I also run a Twitter, like it's just fandom based, like there's no real people.
Yeah.
And both places, when people are being dicks, especially if they're being racist, if they're being, homophobic, I will block them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have said, well, why won't you talk to them? Because it's not my job to be the asshole whisperer. You can believe what you want. That doesn't mean I have to sit here and listen to it.
That's fair.
No, it's not my job to try and change your mind.
Asshole whisperer. I like that. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, I mean, it's and why didn't you talk to them? That's not my job. I'm not their mama.
I'm a grown ass woman.
Yeah,
I'm a grown ass woman. I don't have to listen. Yeah. No, it's fair. No, it's totally fair. It's just that's the thing. Like I hate virtue signaling. I find that is literally the word. Yeah, it's literally the thing that pisses me off the most at this point in my life. It's like I don't got these answers. I don't think you do either. In fact, I'm worried about you. But shrug. But anyway, let's move on to something else.
Sorry, allergies.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Listen, no, I did want to say, oddly enough, thank you very much. I don't know what's been happening. Again, I've been breaking all kinds of personal records lately. I'm not saying it's any one thing that's doing it. I mean, it's just the accumulation of things. But you've definitely gone out of your way to help me out. Actually, since the pandemic and in the midst of all the vaccine craze, so I kind of wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, I didn't think I was doing anything.
Well, no, just I remember I remember, especially like in the height of the vaccine craze where everything had gone absolutely nuts. You kept a level head, but the other thing too is like you've been sharing my stuff for a while. Like I said, so it's just been like you didn't, and you don't have to. So
no, I see something, I like it, I'll share it if I want to.
Exactly.
I've had a couple people come to me and be like, your profile sometimes doesn't look like a writer. Well, that's because that's not my business page. I'm putting up what books are for sale, what books are for pre-order. Yeah, here I'm in this listing. Please go pre-order it, share, newsletter swaps, whatever. But that's also my purpose. So whatever it is that I enjoy or that I think is worth sharing, to share. You don't.
Yeah.
You see me share the same thing a few times. You can mute me. I don't care. But it's just, if I see something that resonates with me or that I just enjoy for whatever reason, I'm going to share it. And I love your posts. because your posts always make sense. They're very down to earth, very normal. You know, there are a lot of people, they go on, you know, motivation tangents, and it's like, that's not motivational. That's you kind of hyping yourself up at this point. Whereas yours is just, you sound like you're talking to people.
Yep. I try. It's like, that's
and
it. That's
like, I'm going to share it and hope that some of my friends who are, you know, mutuals with both of us can see it too.
Yeah. Well, I look at, so the last one I did on like the Wednesday motivation, I literally did that at a Shoppers Drug Mart. So there's a friend of mine, or I don't know, we definitely talk whenever I go into the store. And I told her, like, I joked like I'm rich and shameless. I'm one of the two already, and I'll let you figure out which one. And she goes, I hope you're rich. So actually, I prefer the shameless part. And I told her why. And I actually made her smile, because what I did was, like, most people think like in terms of shame, fear, guilt, those are the things that hold us back more often than not. And if you can get rid of those, and she's like, I think she's coming out on 20 years old. It's like, if you can get rid of these now, like, you realize what these things are, and you can get rid of these things now. A little fear is good. A little fear is healthy. I like being a little nervous. A little nervous goes a long way, right?
But a little nervous can save your life sometimes.
Absolutely. No, a little fear is healthy. A little fear is like, I'm terrified. Like, I worry if I'm not scared of anything. Like there's one thing to be like a little nervous. That's good. But not so. Again, I should be confident when I'm interviewing Marissa Mayer, but I probably should be just a touch nervous. Or otherwise, why am I here? Why am I here? Right? And same thing.
I who have no nerves. It's the difference between Batman and the Joker. If Batman had no morals or no, because the Joker has none. You don't want to be the Joker.
Yeah. No. And if there's no passion, there's no fear, there's no passion. So you got to have a little fear. Guilt, you got to acknowledge when you shit things, you got to acknowledge it, but you move on. And shame, same thing. Like, guilt and shame are kind of just tied together. If you can control your fear and be relatively guilt and shameless, nothing can stop you. And I said that to her, and I watched it sink in with her. It's just like, and it was cool because she's like, I really like that. It's like, yeah, so go for it, right? Because she's got aspirations to be a dancer. Why not encourage her? It's like, yeah, just go for it, right? And that's it. I think the other thing too, like, and I am tooting my own horn when I say this. I want people to succeed. I want everyone to succeed. I think it's possible for everyone to succeed. I just think it's about doing the steps to make that happen.
That is believing in yourself, but also knowing that failure is an option. And again, it's another, I live by song lyrics. Like how most people live by like movie quotes, you know, I hope you understand that giving up decisively also counts as courage. And that's one of the lines. It's like, that's very powerful, because some people don't realize you can give up sometimes.
Yeah.
Even if you're afraid to give up.
Yeah.
Because giving up means that you may give up one thing, but you can go to the next.
Yeah.
Sometimes
we can always pivot.
To give up on things in order to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's just the way it goes, right? It's about, again, at the end of the day, what do you want and what are you willing to do to get it? And if that means going through a myriad of things to find your answers, that's how it goes. That's how it works. Song lyrics, huh? So my favorite one, ironically, comes from one of the worst albums of all time. Saint Anger by Metallica is one of the worst albums of all time. It is very hard. It's very hard to listen to that all the way through. I can't do it. I just can't.
I don't think I ever have. It's bad.
No, yeah, but I do like the first song, Frantic. Is actually a really good song. It's better live than it is in person than on that album, but it's still a decent song. It's one of the only decent songs on that album. And my lifestyle determines my death style. I love that line. That's from that album. All right. So it's like there are gems everywhere, folks. The other lesson about that, there are gems in everything.
Song that just came out this year. And one of the lines is actually one of the few that doesn't need to be translated. And you have to sit there and think about it for a minute, is if we live fast, let us die young.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, usually you hear live fast, die young. And when you sit and hear that, and then you compare it to the rest of the song lyrics once they're translated, they're saying they don't want to live fast. We want to live at a pace. We don't want to die young. We want to keep going. We want to not give up. We don't want to be stopped. We don't want to use up everything, in our 20s.
Yeah.
And me being at, the tail end, the last year of my 20s, that's very meaningful. And it's packed in this fun dance song. But you're listening to this whole thing. And at the end, they just repeat, run, beautiful, you've got to run.
Yeah.
And it's like to keep going. And it goes with that line. That's one of my favorite lines now.
Yeah. So who sang that?
BTS.
BTS. It's okay. Listen, hey, I don't judge. I am like the least coolest person here.
I have a tattoo for them. It's
nice. Nice.
It's a slogan my favorite member came up with, and it's shorthand in Korean. And what it stands for is Army Forever, which is our fandom, Bantan Forever, which Bantan means bulletproof. And the reason I got it, they've helped me through a lot of things, but a lot of people don't understand their lyrics are so deep. And when you get into the translations, that you literally have to sit there and think about them. Some of their songs have been written from The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. A lot of Ursula K. Le Guin, Carl Jung. They actually have 2 concept albums, Map of the Soul 7 and Map of the Soul Persona, which are based around Jung's teaching about the persona and the ego and the shadow.
So it's funny because one of my favorite songs from there is from a video game called Persona. Right? Persona 5 is one of my favorite games ever. But my favorite thing, what's one of my favorite songs is called Rivers in the Desert. It's the final boss music in the game. Right? It's literally the final. It sounds like a Michael Jackson song. Like you're literally it's
fun.
No, you're bopping to this. Like when you first hear the song, there's the instrumental version in the first phase of this boss battle, but then you get to the actual boss fight, the real one, right? All of a sudden you hear it's now, it's never, and I got to make my decision as I'm in that moment, and just all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, this is your main character's theme music for everything he goes through in that entire game, right? And it's amazing. In fact, I probably died the first time because I just got caught up listening to the beats of the song the first time. But because it's a wicked song to fight to. But when you actually listen to the lyrics, this is a Japanese band doing an English song, and you're like, this is. And honestly, Rivers in the Desert has kind of been my mantra in my head for the last 3 years, and it's just been because the idea of creating a river in the desert or building something from the ground up or something new coming from all this trials and tribulations and turmoil that you've experienced, not just in the game, but in real life. It's I like that idea. And and it sounds like a Michael Jackson song, so it's at the same time, it's unbelievable. But again, there's some really cool shit all over the world. And that's the other thing about this day and age is
BTS has a song, it's Para, which is sea in English. And it's when we're together, the desert becomes the sea. And it's about how when they were being literally tried to be pushed out of the music industry because they were on a really crappy label. They call it a $5 and a dream label because that's how bad the label was. I mean, it was in the red, bankruptcy, going to close down. So they tried pushing them out. And they wrote the song about their fans saying, because of you, the desert became the sea. We were able to swim. We're no longer drowning. We're no longer drowning in sand. We're floating on love.
So,
and it's so many deep lyrics and so many beautiful things. And even being an emo fan that I was, My Chemical Romance, I got laughed at with that too. They have very deep lyrics.
Actually, you know what? So here, I'm going to make a confession on the air. I have become a Taylor Swift fan. Terribly. I know it's terrible, right? I like listening to her stuff when I'm writing. When I'm listening to my own stuff for fun, it's metal, it's OTEP, it's Amon Amarth, it's the angry.
You love OTEP?
Yes.
Can I get this on camera somehow?
Okay, yeah, you gotta be able to do that. Yeah, okay, yep, I know that album.
In her
It's not my
handwriting.
it's not my favorite of theirs. My favorite is Smash the Control Machine. But
Oh, that's my favorite too. The reason that I got this is just for the message behind it. You know, my favorite Smash
okay,
the Control
got you,
Machine as
got you.
well.
Yeah, yeah. So when I'm just listening for the sake of listening, it's usually metal. But when I'm writing, it's Taylor Swift. I'm totally showing my uncoolness here. Lights is really cool, and
Yes,
Avril Lavigne,
I
right? So
love her.
this is actually my favorite Avril Lavigne album because I think it reflects me in my 30s perfectly. That desire to not give a shit versus still caring way too much, right? And now that I'm 40, I care more actually. It's just now it's like, what is worth my energy at this point in my life, right? So maybe I'll get to the couch thing, which Anita mentioned earlier, when I'm 50. Like, who knows, right? But
certain times in your life, music can define them. Like, you know, the emo, the My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, they did describe what things were like, you know, as a teenager.
yeah,
Well, as my teenage years, you know, my 20s, was more early 20s was I was listening to a lot of Korn and Slipknot because they had a lot of anger.
yeah,
That got that out. Into my late 20s now, it has become BTS, who does sing songs about college, your future, the things you have to think of as you're leaving your 20s. And now they're doing solo music. Their lead songwriter, RM, he's going to be releasing his new album soon. And he said it's a collection of leaving your 20s. Only you're younger than me. So it's like he's literally writing the things that I am living through
yeah.
at the same time. You know, we're all going through this at the same time. And that's
Yeah.
another thing that I also wanted to do with novels is I wanted to capture things that people are living through, even if it's in a fantasy element.
Sure.
You know, that's the reality element that I put in there. You know, things like family death, like breakups, like, you know, worrying about your job, worrying about all these things. I want to put that in there.
Or worrying about no future, which is the other
Yeah.
thing too. Like I think that's I going for the next 10 years, because watching how things are upheavaling in the next, like, this is going to be a very different world in 2030. You can see it. Like, you can just see it's going to be a very different world. Hopefully a wiser, better, kinder, gentler world. We'll see how we get there.
We can do our best to work towards that.
Yeah, we'll see how we get there. That's my wonderful questions. We'll see. But either way, what I'm very much like I think great work uses our times. I had Gail Z. Martin on the show about last week, and we were talking about like what era this is right now, right? And her argument was we're just coming out of the 20s, like the pandemic 20s, and my argument with her is actually I think we're in the 30s. Like, we are in the 30s, and just different reasons as to why we thought that way, and we could just see the connections, right? I think one of the most interesting things about the human story, the whole human story, is we're talking about the same things we've always talked about, just in different places in different times. And I'm always fascinated by that, because it's like, in one way, it's like, are we learning anything? No. Sometimes you think no, but on the other hand, it's just like, no, we're telling our story over and over and over and over again. And I think great writers do the same thing in their books. The story, the experiences they're living through. One of my other album that's very ironically is similar to that Lavigne album, although people may not see it right away. Eminem's Recovery album.
Oh, that's
right?
such a good one.
You know, in my opinion, it's his best album. It's probably since the Marshall Mathers LP is my all-time favorite of his. That one's number 2. It's the first time in a long time he's tried to be different. It was him bearing his soul.
No, see, there was a lot of vulnerability.
Yeah, which is something he doesn't do a lot of, right? But that's what makes that album so good, is, again, that same balance. He's angry at the world, but he cares. And it's interesting to see how he does that. Now, I loved Music to Be Murdered By. His last album is really good, too. I think because, again, he's at his best when he's got a really message he really believes in. And that album does have a lot of that in it. But Recovery and the Goodbye Lullaby deal with the same themes. Trying sometimes wishing you didn't care as much as you did, versus and caring, and what they're going through at that point in their lives. I think all great artists do that, all of them, even Taylor Swift. Even though some people might hate it, even Taylor Swift. Right?
Yeah, her lyrics are very personal. I
Yeah.
personally am not a fan of her voice, but you can't
Yeah.
fault her lyrics.
Yeah.
Beats' last full studio album, B, was released during the pandemic. And that's what they did, was writing about what was around them. You know,
Yeah.
they had the hopeful songs like Life Goes On, and then they have a song called Blue and Gray. And one of the members was severely depressed due to the pandemic. The member who wrote, his name's Taeyong. And one of the lyrics is, I just want to be happy, or does that make me greedy? And it's one of the darkest, most beautiful, sad songs. I mean, I can't listen to it without crying.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, the whole album encompasses so much of the human emotion, but a large part of it is being a person who was moving forward, especially at our age, in our 20s, and we're at these places, and then the pandemic just shut us all down. You know, it stopped our growth in a way, especially, you know, the younger of us. And that album perfectly captures how that growth was put on pause. You know, it has one very flashy, like, fun dance track, and everything else is very introspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of those albums where, if people were saying, you know, pandemic albums are things that you were able to relate to, because a lot of artists released great music during the pandemic because all they could do was create, you know, they couldn't tour. That is honestly the definition of what most of us were all going through, being trapped in there. And that's, a lot of people laugh. They had an English song, Permission to Dance. And it's like, oh, it's fun. It's like, when you break it down, we had permission to do nothing. But we didn't need permission to dance. We need permission to be happy. And that was kind of what they back-ended all of their pandemic music with. That was the last thing they released.
So something like that forces you to examine your mortality in the mirror. It was my second apocalypse, right? It was my second apocalypse. My first one was much more personal, but my second one. But so you can't be afraid of looking at yourself in those moments. And I think the more introspective you are, and the more you're honest about who you are and where you stand, that's the thing of what the pandemic did for all of us, is it forced us to really examine that and recognize that, you know, in some cases we're different people than when we walked into it. I think the world is a little less gentle than it was before pandemic. And I'm hoping that gentleness comes back. But at the same time, it goes back to something I said at the beginning too. You can't control change, but you can control how you change.
Yeah. Yeah. You control how you react to it as well. And that's one of those things at that album. Like, I'm very good usually at writing my feelings, but there are times where I can't put words to anything, and that album put words to almost everything.
And you know what? Really, that's fair. Yeah, and honestly, if for you, and just like I said, for you, that no, so I have a conclusion about you, and I feel bad because we're gonna have to wrap this up soon, because I do have another interview I'm doing today.
You do?
I do want to get some food before that round. First off, though, you're incredibly tough, and I said that it was a compliment. Like I
definitely take it as a compliment.
Yeah, you're tough. I can like, you feel like a very, very solid person, and so I don't know of everything you've been through. I don't want to compare battle scars, because I think I will feel very inadequate when it's all said and done. But that all said, I don't think you're the kind of person to break. But I don't. No. But
I broke twice in my life. One time when I was 13 that I shouldn't have, and another when I was 26 when I had to be forced to take control of my self-worth, and I broke before that.
Yeah.
And I was at that. I was the edge of the cliff. I was going off. You know, that lyric that I mentioned earlier, I was going off. And thankfully I did not. I pieced myself back together. My mom helped me. And I vowed to never break again. That's actually something I'm putting into my next book. I don't know if you've ever seen me post, because I can't reveal the title yet because the title is the character's name. I've been calling it The Wrong Book.
Yeah, I've seen The Wrong Book. Okay.
Yeah, The Wrong Book. And that is what's going to go into it, is the struggles I have gone through from 2019 through all the shit this year with losing my mom and everything. And my main character is going to go through that while she deals with, everything else, the main plot. In the hopes that other people can see my scars on her and maybe they won't feel alone.
I'm going to change what I was going to say about you.
Okay.
Actually.
Okay.
No. I actually feel like, can I give you a teeny piece of advice? Because you are so strong and tough. Don't make yourself the promise that you won't break again. Because there will come a point in your life that you will face something you cannot. We all, doesn't matter how old you get, we all have our breaking points. You're stronger than a lot of people. Again, this is not a knock on strength. It's okay to break sometimes. It's what you become after you break. Right? So I'm just saying, if I'm not wishing a breaking, I'm not wishing anything on you, but if you do come to another breaking point at some point in life, 2 things. Forgive yourself. It's okay. And I think you understand why I say that. And the second thing is this. No matter how you break, right? No matter how you break, you can always become something else you want to be. And that's why I say that. Don't make that promise. Instead, make the promise that when you do break again, right, you won't let yourself become a certain way you don't want to be. I think that's more what you're going for. Don't ever say you won't ever break again. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Don't not come back from it.
Yeah, exactly.
That worst thing is to never come back from
break.
After losing mom, I'm held together with duct tape and a prayer.
Yeah,
that's that old saying, and that's it. But I'd rather be held together with duct tape and a prayer than nothing.
No, it's fair. It's fair. But again, if you do, it's okay. That's all I'm saying. And I kind of want to give you a hug now, and I wish I could. So I mean, that's yes, I could, but yeah, I say that because I've seen a lot. So the other thing I've seen a lot is sometimes, God, I feel old saying this. I'm sorry. Kids your age, right? You have it, right? Is sometimes you'll let your pride or your anger try to hold you together, and you shouldn't. It's okay to go down. Just right. It's okay. It's okay to take your standing 8 count, Lily. Okay, just take your standing 8 count once in a while. Okay, it's okay. And I said you don't have to be invincible in this world. In fact, you aren't. You're gonna get knocked on your ass. I'm gonna get knocked on my ass the rest of my life. It's actually kind of fun. Sometimes it's kind of fun actually when you do that. If you're not afraid of the knockdown, it's actually oddly liberating sometimes to get knocked on your ass. Sometimes.
Yeah, depending on the knockdown, yeah. I actually had a knockdown, quote unquote, with one of my series, and it just kind of, okay, I'm putting this on pause. This knocked me down. I can't do this, but I'm going to come back and do something different, which wound up being the wrong book.
Yeah, but, which is what you need to write.
Some knockdowns are needed.
Yeah, exactly. So don't say never break. Instead say, I'm not going to stay broken. Because that's when... Because if he does break you, then you will stay broken. Because you're like, I couldn't do it. It's like, no. I'm going to get broken. That's fine. I'm going to come back. Right? So.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for that. You are very kind.
Yeah.
You are. You really are. Thank you.
Don't tell anybody. Oh, tell everybody. I don't care.
I think I just told everybody.
Yeah. Yes. So this is what I want to do. Whereabouts are you located again? I just like you don't have to be like
Chicago.
You're just north of Chicago. Okay.
Yes.
So you're not that far. So next year, when I am officially quote unquote on the road doing this podcast, right? I don't know what your attitude in regards to booze and ice cream is, but do you want to meet and do this again on the air with booze and ice cream?
It'll have to be dairy-free ice cream, but hell yes, that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah. It can be. Hey, listen, Whatever is good for you. It's all fine. So you take like little Baileys and you put a little ice cream together. It's a wonderful combination. I'm looking at next year. The show is going to go on the road. It's the next place I want to take it, and I'm going to. I might be stuck in Western, like the Midwest, Western, in Canada, United States next year. Contracts and stuff on other things I'm doing,
Right.
but I do definitely want to. Again, I'm looking at what I want to do with the show after I break 1,000, and one of the things I'm going to do is for sure. So I already have a promised chocolate hunt I'm doing with one author in Vancouver. I have, all right, Marissa Mayer agreed to let me do this with her in Washington. So I'm going to do this with Marissa Mayer again. I'm going to try and just recruit as many different people because, again, I've been very blessed with the fact that I've gotten to meet a lot of amazing people, yourself included. And I'd love to meet you all in person and do this again in person and go on another crazy adventure with everybody.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'm holding you to that. Another interview with booze and ice cream. Definitely.
Yes, I shall. Although I may bring you back before that too. So I may say this now, ladies and gentlemen. This is so between episodes 900 and 1,000. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to try to interview different people from all the different eras of the podcast. As is 1,000 episodes is kind of like a cool little thing. Would you like to be back and be part of that at some point?
I would love to. I would be honored to. Thank you for asking.
Yes. So it's going to happen. And Anita, if you are still there, you're probably going to be one of the people I asked to. I'm just letting you know that up front. Yeah. But I think, I wish we had a little more time, but I should eat before I go to my next conversation.
I should do that before I go to work.
Yeah. But Lily, you got a book coming out, don't you?
Yes, I actually have 2 books coming out. One on Halloween, which is a short story I have revamped, and the other one is coming out November 1st, a day later, and it is my yearly Christmas anthology, which I originally started for my mom, and I'm going back to the Winter Creek fictional town and writing some holiday joy in the midst of, I'm sandwiching holiday joy in between vampires, and then my release in January is more vampires. It's called Under the Red Rain, and it's a YA LGBT horror novella, and it's one of my favorite things that I have ever written.
How violent is the January story? I'm asking this really quick.
Violent. I mean, you've got baseball bashings in the head, stabbings, decapitations. It's fun. It was fun writing it.
So vampires, exorcisms, all that stuff for Halloween. A little pause for nutmeg and eggnog and stuff for Christmas. Then more chaos
in
in
the new year, we're right back. Yeah, right
chaos
back
in
to blood.
Yeah, okay.
I like to balance things. That's why I have 2 pen names.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Next fun is that's under the Samantha Calcott pen name. That's where I do most of my contemporary and romance. And then as Lily, I cause bloodshed.
But hey, listen, I'm good with it. I think this is an absolute. I'm trying not to laugh too hard just thinking about this in my head. It's just like the 2 sides of Lily, the nice contemporary side, and just and the person will take a nail bat to you and just like go to town. It's like,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly it. I need an outlet for both, so I got it.
I know. Hey, you know what? And that's great. So, where would you like people to go? Like you probably should promote a webpage or something like that. Like, do you have anything like that for anybody watching or listening?
Actually, simply typing my name in takes you right to my main website, which has my newsletter, and that is the main place where you can get all of my updates on my releases. And also, I always update my new releases even before Facebook on twitter.com/Lily Luchesi. So that's another place. Every time you check it, my pinned post will be my latest release.
Okay, so I'm gonna do my
the one that I'm promoting the most, which what's pinned right now is the current list aim that I'm doing to hopefully hit USA Today again. And that's going to be switched out on Halloween. It's going to be switched out again. So that is definitely the place to go. And you don't even have to scroll. It's right there. It's the pin post.
And to everybody watching and listening, I'm a trained professional. Sorry, this took so long. They give me an award for this podcast, Lily. Once upon a time. So, but that all said, no, good luck with absolutely everything. We'll definitely do this again sometime next year when you maybe we should just have you just make the arrangement to come back in January for to advertise your other Mayhem book. New year we'll start right. We'll just yeah, that works for you. And then and then in the summer/fall sometime, ice cream, booze, camera, interview, and just again, don't take my lunch money on the air.
I promise when I do that, it will be off the air.
Sweet.
It'll be off the air, I promise.
And I get to look forward to that. I'm going to get taken for a ride off the air, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first. But everyone watching this thing, I do an advertising service for videos for books, projects, brands, and yourselves. I do them now. You can see some of the videos, samples of the videos. You can check out my TikTok, my Instagram, my Facebook. You can see different things I've done with different authors. Take a look at that now. And that's going to do it. I got to go eat, or I would have actually talked with Lily a little longer. She's awesome. If you haven't listened to this whole conversation already, it's like she is an awesome human being and definitely worth checking out. But I got another podcast with Leanne and Gino. That's going to be about an hour and a half. So I'm going to depart for now. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. And stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll be back a little bit later tonight.